Hi, I'm Pam.
Hi, I'm Hannah.
Hi, I'm Ann.
Hi, I'm Megan.
Hi, I'm Jody.
Hi, I'm Marie, and we're coming to you live from Austin, Texas, because it's
Happy Woolen Wednesday!
Yay! Really happy Wednesday. Megan's here, and her dad Jody drove her all the way from Ohio. We're so excited to have you back, Megan.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
This is your third year.
Yes, it is.
We're so excited because every year she's been working all year long learning new stuff, right? Refining her techniques, and then we get to learn from them. And Jody, how many hours did you drive yesterday?
About 18 hours.
18 hours. So I think Megan's buying him dinner tonight, probably. We are so glad that you are here with us. We're so glad that Megan is here with us. She's going to spend 3 days teaching us how to felt fabulous felines. And now we're going to have a little hour of Q&A with her, and we're all going to get started. Thanks for being here, y'all. Hey everybody, I'm Marie. We are Living Felt Felting Supplies here in Austin, Texas. This is what we like to do on Wednesdays, is spend about an hour hanging out with our friends. That's you, and we're so thrilled to have Megan here. I'm going to bring her on in just a minute. What you'll see is that people are joining the feed and they're saying hi and where they're from. So please do that too. Say hi and where you're from. This is an interactive hour. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions, and we'll do our best to cover them and get them answered. Some people have already queued up questions that Megan is prepared to respond to, and we have some of her amazing sculptures that she'll use as part of her talking points, and she even brought some really cool visual aids. So I'm so glad you're here and watching, and I just want to say hi to a couple of people that are checking in. So let me cue us up so Megan can see you too. Can you see us in the group, Ann? Ann sees us in the group. Oh, there we are. I see everybody. How fun. Okay, so I'm going to cue this up. I know your questions are coming in. Ann is our producer. She's going to write down your names, and everybody who either contributes or answers a question, your name will go in the hat if you're watching live, and we're going to draw some prizes and presents at the end. So super, super fun. Hey, Ann, before we get started with Megan, were you going to do a shout out? Okay, we're going to do one shout out to one of our felting friends. Thanks for being here, y'all.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We wanted to give a very special shout out to Wendy Taylor. Thank you so much for that sweet note that you posted on Facebook. It really brightened our Monday, and it was just such a beautiful thing to come into work and see that. And thank you to everybody who responded to that post and added just wonderful things. We are so grateful for y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Okay, we're not going to spend a lot of time with other stuff today. I know some people had some questions, but this is a rare opportunity. We have here Megan NEDDS of the Woolen Wagon. I know that you all know her work. She posts wonderful works in progress on her own page, the Woolen Wagon on Facebook. She sells her amazing sculptures on Etsy. Sometimes she uses our fiber, and that just thrills us to no end. And we're just so glad to have her. So would y'all help me welcome Megan NEDDS? Come on in, Megan! Yay!
Hi, everyone.
Megan, you dwell where?
I live in Merino, Ohio. It's northern central Ohio.
Big or little?
It's little. Yeah, it's a lot smaller than Austin, I can tell you that.
So, Megan, tell everybody, how long have you been felting?
I started in 2012. I was just looking for something to pass the summer before I started college, so I ordered some supplies and I started experimenting, and it all came from there. It all went from there.
How many sculptures do you make like a year right now?
I would say I try to do one a week. Sometimes it doesn't happen. I end up with 30 to 40 per year, I think.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
That's so, like, how many hours does each sculpture do you spend on each sculpture?
Some of the smaller ones, I'd say 20 to 30 hours, and some of the bigger ones maybe closer to 200 to 300 hours.
And what's that? So that's how many sculptures? 30 to 40 sculptures a year times, on average, 75 hours, let's say. That's probably not true, but let's say, I mean, it might be more, but 75 hours. How much time is that? And doing fast math. Millennial math, the calculator. Yeah.
And okay, there it goes.
How many hours?
Okay.
Someone's going to punch the number up before Ann does.
Yes. 22,000 1,500, does that sound right?
No. We're gonna get over it. My point is that Megan, you spend a lot of time with your craft, right?
Right.
You really, really do.
Yeah.
And this is year in, year out. You've been refining your craft and doing just incredible sculptures.
Right.
And you brought one with you today, and I brought one that lives at my house. So I know we have questions that people want to ask. What question would you like to tackle first? I'll assist you.
Let's do the fur since we have everything on top.
Okay,
That's fine.
okay.
All right.
So someone asked to see long fur, and I'm going to assist Megan, and you're going to demonstrate right here?
Right, I'm going to demonstrate how to apply a long fur and how to, someone said something about short fur, so I'll demonstrate that too.
Oh, fun. And you have everything that you need right now?
Yep, I have everything.
Scissors now. Okay, so we're going to turn our cameras down. And let me just see how we're doing. I would rather be in a little bit closer. And on this camera, I'm going to go ahead and zoom. Oh, that looks good. Now, Megan, tell us what fiber you're working with here.
This is alpaca fiber, and it's super soft and it has a nice long staple length. I really love alpaca fiber for long fur application because it doesn't felt easily. So that means when you add it to your sculpture, it makes it a little bit harder to add, but then it means that it won't get all tangled up once your sculpture starts to get handled a little bit. So I'm going to demonstrate. You take a tuft of the fiber. Any fiber that has more of a hairy texture than a fluffy texture you can use for long hair. It just depends on what kind of texture you want for your animal that you're working on. So you take the fiber and you lay it down on your project, and you use a heavy gauge needle, and you just felt down the middle. Does that show up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can stay right about in the middle. We're good.
So this is a really long process, but I think that, move it over a little bit, okay. It's a really long process sometimes, especially when you're working on a larger sculpture, but it's well worth the time in the end. It makes it look a little bit more realistic. So after you have that felted down, you can fold the fiber back over, and then you have some crazy hair, and you do that all over the sculpture. And then you have to cut it to length. So if you're having something with longer hair like this, you can leave it like that. Or if you have something with short hair, you can cut it like that.
Very nice.
And I like to do a large section and then I cut it, and then I do another section and then I cut it to the length. I don't do the entire sculpture before I start cutting. And then if you want something that has a little bit more of a natural edge instead of a sharp cut edge, you can use your scissors to kind of give it a more natural look if you cut it like that.
Megan, what is your favorite needles for securing fur?
I like to use really heavy needles. So if you have a large sculpture, the heaviest needle you have, I would definitely use the heaviest needle.
And do you prefer a triangle or a spiral?
I prefer triangle or star.
Okay, triangle or a star, and the heaviest gauge needle, so a 32 or a 36
Yes.
for anchoring in fur. With that said, what would you say about the body of the piece?
The sculpture you're working on needs to be really firm for this fiber to stick in there. If it's still really loosely felted, the fiber is just going to pull out. It's not going to stay in the sculpture. So the body of your animal needs to be felted very firm for the fiber to stay in. Yeah.
Someone said that you are a felter and a hairstylist, Carol Jensen. And Heather Douglas says she uses thinning shears to do the edges.
Oh yeah.
And then someone else says, what other fibers in addition to alpaca do you prefer for this look? So what other breeds do you like to use for a longer or medium length hair?
Yeah. For the longer, I really like Surrey alpaca. We also have Jacob roving. I think this is the Jacob. And then for animals with shorter fiber, Merino works really well because when you cut it really short, then it doesn't felt, even though it felts a lot easier than alpaca. If you cut it short, then it'll still retain that long hair look.
Very nice.
And Maria wants to know, do you finish the piece with the fine needles?
For a sculpture with long hair, I don't. But if I'm doing a smooth sculpture, like if this were going to be the top coat, I would use, I like to use spiral needles. I like to use fine needles, fine spiral.
Very cool.
And Sharon asks, what kind of hair do you use for whiskers?
I use horsehair. I use a needle, a sewing needle, and I thread them through from cheek to cheek, and then I secure it with glue. Yeah.
Great. Megan, you're getting lots of love.
Thank you, everyone.
I say, just saying they got it. Very good, very good. Somebody asked, I know there, so you use the horsehair for the whiskers,
Yes,
right?
right.
Okay, maybe that was the question. I thought there was one other one. Very cool, very cool.
Yeah.
That's great. And I know that we've actually showed this same technique before, but people feel like it's kind of beyond them somehow to do.
Yeah, it's really simple to do, but it's just very time consuming. So you just have to have lots of patience.
Do you ever cut the fiber before you apply it, or you always cut it after?
Sometimes, if I'm working with something that's really long, I'll cut it if I know it's going to be a lot shorter. But it's easier the longer it is, the easier it is to apply to your project because it gives you something to hold on to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you for that, Megan.
Yeah.
And then, so I know another question, maybe while we're, I don't think I brought you the fiber. Well, maybe we can talk a little bit about the armature themselves, and we'll turn down when you're ready to display.
Okay.
Yeah. So Megan, I know first I want to say, y'all, Megan's sculptures are amazing. Well, maybe we could. This is a similar. It's
Yeah,
bigger.
this is the same. It's just a little bit bigger than this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this tiger Megan made as a commission is a gift for my husband's birthday this last year, and it's so brilliant and really firm. Megan, talk to us about the firmness.
Yeah, this is really, really firm. It definitely doesn't feel like fluffy wool. I like to felt my sculptures very firm, even if I'm not applying long fur. I think it makes the surface look smoother the more firm your felt, because then you don't see every little poke that you put in.
Right, you're able to flatten it when you have a firm underneath.
Right, it's completely smooth.
So we're going to say that again, because we say this like every 3 shows. If you make a firm underbody, it's easier to get the smooth finish, and you use what needles for the top finish?
For the top finish, I like to use 38 probably, or even 40. And I really like to use spiral needles if I have them, but any kind of 38 or 40 will work. Yeah, and I also like to use the punch tool, the little green punch tool.
Yeah.
I know most people use it for flat felt. Do you have one?
But yeah, the thing about that tool, you're talking about the clover tool.
Yeah.
The thing about that tool is I tell people it's good for when you have a sphere, because you can just work your way around, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So even though most people, I think, use it for flat felting, when I have all the top coat on, I like to go over the entire sculpture with the punch tool too.
Very cool. And then usually it's loaded with fine needles, like 40 triangles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Good to know.
And Melanie asks, how did you add the tiger stripes?
The tiger stripes are just black wool. I use the black Merino cross fiber bats. I would just I can just use this as an example. So you just take some wool. Does this show up?
Very little. Yep.
All right, and you kind of roll it in your fingers to make it long and skinny. And then just lay it on the body and felt it in with a medium to fine needle.
Yep. So you're just making the stripes with your hand
Right.
before you do it.
Yeah, I just kind of roll it to kind of get rid of all the loose fibers, and then I lay it on and tack it in with the medium to fine needle.
Make a noodle.
Yeah.
Very nice. People are saying they're glad to see you.
Thanks,
Wow,
everyone.
she's good. Let's see, what else? So Megan, let's talk a little bit about forming that armature. What would you like to school us on today on the thing that everybody wants to know is how can their sculptures be more lifelike and more realistic?
Yeah, proportions are a big part of trying to get a lifelike sculpture, and that's one of the hardest things to work on.
Let's scoot you back
Okay.
just for a little less detail.
Okay. Yeah, proportions are hard and they're really tricky sometimes because what this skeleton looks like now is not what it's going to look like after the wool's added. So sometimes it helps to make a drawing. So I brought one today. So this is what we'll be using in the feline class. If you draw an outline of the animal you're making, then you can actually draw in the armature. That way you can figure out how big each part needs to be. And when you're making an armature, it's important to remember that when I needle felt, I always have more wool on the belly than I have on the back, so I accounted for that in the armature. And then on the legs, they're going to be longer. The armature will be longer than what the finished product will be because a lot of the legs are hidden up inside the body.
Shoulder and the hip.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I make the legs longer than what you see when you're looking at like a big cat, for example. Yeah, so it really helps if you make a drawing like that.
Now you drew that yourself,
Yes.
right, Megan? And you sell those on your Etsy?
No, actually, I just drew this a couple days ago. I don't
For the
have it
class.
available. Right.
Mhm.
But yeah. But even if you don't feel like you can draw or you don't want to draw, you can also get a picture, a profile picture of the animal and print it out and then actually draw the armature over that too.
That's awesome. And so that particular drawing, what would you say that is? Is that was that almost universal for any of the big cats we're doing?
Yeah, for
Or-
the armature, yeah, a lot of the armatures are going to be really similar because a lot of the things that make big cats that distinct the different species are like the top coats and the facial features. So this would be pretty much any big cat. A cheetah would have longer legs. So if you want to change the proportions of an animal you're working on, I write down all the measurements I use for all of my armatures. So every time I make an animal, even if I've made it before, I write down my armature measurements. How long my wire lengths were, how long each part of the body was, and then if I go to make that animal again and I want to make changes, it's easy to do that. So if I were using this armature but I wanted something with longer legs like a cheetah, I would just cut the wire longer and then the legs would be longer and then that's how you can change the proportions.
Okay, so what about like you take this drawing, like I read that a tiger is maybe 9 feet long, maybe on average 9 feet long. So what people want to know is how do they do scale? Like if they look up and see the real measurements of an animal, how do they compute or how do you compute? Are you doing it all by eye? And
Yeah, sometimes I do scale, like a lot of times I'll make pets for people and they want it to be a certain scale, so it's really important to try to get the size right. Most of the time you can find measurements for animals online, like the head body length is available a lot and also the height to the shoulder. So you just take that measurement and if you want to make a 1/4 scale, you just divide those by 4 and then that's how you do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. I was going to ask you something here. Oh, can you show that armature in relation to the drawing and then talk about what the gauge wire you use? And
Yeah, so this is the armature. It should line up pretty close to the drawing. And then this is 12 gauge. So since I do felt so firm, I have to use a heavier wire because it makes the sculptures more dense and it makes it harder to bend. So I like to use 12 gauge for most of my animals.
very nice.
Thank you.
And a couple of our felting friends want to know, how do you make the individual paws?
Oh, like the toes? All right. So I kind of scooch in.
Perfect. I'll go down. Thanks for being here, Megan.
Yeah, thank you. It's
We're-
really fun. It's always fun when I come here.
We love it too. Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna just turn this camera a bit. Let's see. I'm gonna move them over. Okay.
Oh yeah. There should be some toes in a baggie in that orange bag. This might be easier since it's just toes.
And Sharon wants to know, do you use a lighter gauge of armature for the tails?
Yes, the tail on that armature was a 14 gauge and the body was 12 gauge. All right, so for the paws, it starts out like this. It's just the wire covered in a thin layer of wool, and it's just wrapped in wool. And then I make individual toes. I just take some of the wool and I make little noodle shapes.
Go back a little bit. Back and perfect.
So I have the noodle shapes, and then I apply them one at a time on the foot. I start at the top of the foot, I needle felt that down, and then I fold the rest over the front of the foot and I needle felt that on the bottom. So I do that for each of the toes, and that's how I make the paws. I hope that makes sense to everyone.
Awesome. We'll show these guys' paws.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see if I'm in there. Just so y'all can see how amazing they are, and then upside down.
And Linda wants to know, do you have any tips for if you get halfway into a project and realize that the legs are just too short?
Yeah, that is really frustrating when that happens. The way I bend my wire, I always bend my wire on the front legs with a shoulder bend and an elbow bend, and then like all these bends. So then if it would happen to be too short, you can always really pull it and it would stretch it out to be a little bit longer. So that's one way to remedy, is to have some extra bends in there, so you have some extra wire if you need to pull it out. Or you can tuck the stomach in a little bit. So if your legs were too short, you can try to needle felt that stomach down a little bit, and that'll make the legs appear longer.
Good tip. Someone said, how do you, one, is it poseable with the 12 gauge wire?
Yeah, it's really poseable. Yeah, even though it's 12 gauge, once you get a layer of wool on there, it's really easy to bend. Yeah.
Easy. And someone said, how did you do the bottom of the feet?
The bottom of the feet, those are sometimes a headache to do, just because it's really hard with the wire in the foot. Sometimes you hit the wire and it's really hard with your needle. You just have to, I like to take like little pieces of black wool and I roll it in a ball, and then I set it on there and just use my needle. And sometimes you just have to play with it. You kind of have to stab at an angle a little bit instead of straight up and down. That way you don't hit your wire.
Do you hit the wire a lot?
Yeah, I do break needles on the wire sometimes, so you have to have lots of extra needles.
Extra needles and extra patience.
Yeah.
So helpful, Megan, so much.
And Kelly wants to know, does the armature basically follow the main bone structure of the animal?
For the most part, yeah. On a real cat, I'll show this picture again. There wouldn't be as much flesh above the spine on a real animal, but since I know I like to add a nice thick layer of wool on top of the spine, I have to account for that. But for the most part, these would be the correct proportions.
And then Connie asks, I've read that cats are harder because their head to body proportion is different than a lot of animals. Do you know if that's true?
Yeah, I find cats a lot more challenging than like a dog, but mostly you just have to practice. Every cat that I make, I think I learned something new. So, hi. So I learned something new with every cat that I make. So I just try to apply what I learned from the last cat to the new cat, and I just keep trying to build on that.
Do you use the same long fiber technique when making the feathers for the front of your birds?
Yeah, I can show that too. So this is Rico. He's an Amazon parrot, and the feathers on the back are wet felted, but his stomach and chest is the long fur application. So yeah, I apply it the same way that I demonstrated a little bit ago. I just I apply it and then I cut it to the right length.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Luoma asks, do you prefer glass eyes or wool eyes?
I prefer glass eyes. I think they just add extra texture to the sculpture, a little bit more mixed media. I can kind of show, this one has glass eyes. I like to get, if you have clear glass eyes, you can paint the backs and you can make it whatever color you want. I had some eyes, here they are. So the glass eyes come they come as a pair on one piece of wire. You can also, and then when you go to apply them, you can cut them in half. And then you have this eye on a wire, and then you stick it in the animal and you can kind of move it around, and once you figure out where you want it to be, and then you can glue it in.
And then Sharon asks, have you ever made an octopus?
I have not made an octopus, but that'd be a lot of fun.
Let's see, someone asked, let me see, Pam Golding said, what kind of wool did you use on Rico?
Rico, his entire top coat is made from Merino top.
And I think those are the colors right behind you,
Yes.
back there.
Yes, these are the colors that I used on Rico. Lots of different greens. I think it's important when you're making animals to, even if it's just a green bird, to have lots of different shades. That way you can add some gradation and it makes it a little bit more lifelike. Yeah, so this is all Merino top. And then the feet were made with the Merino cross bats. The wool on the feet.
The RMC1 bats?
Yes.
Now, what did you make that beak from? You taught us that last year.
Yeah, the beak and the claws are both made out of polymer clay, which sometimes that can be frustrating to use, but it just, like anything, it just takes practice. I make it on a wire, and then after it's baked, you can just stick it in the armature and use glue to hold it in place.
Yeah, now you have some work in process pictures of him on your personal Facebook, on the Woolen Wagon.
On the Woolen Wagon.
Yeah, if y'all go to the Woolen Wagon, you can see, look through her photos, she has
Yeah.
some work in process of him too.
Mhm.
So was I gonna ask you, someone said, oh, do you use a hand carder? Do you use any kind of carder?
I do not use any hand carders. I don't have any at my house, so I just blend colors by hand, which I can demonstrate for you guys.
Okay, I'll help tidy here.
Thank you.
I'll give you, we'll do cooking show down below.
And Luann Mac Johnston wants to know, she says, OMG, are all the feathers on Rico individually made?
Yes and no. I like to wet felt sheets of wool, so for his feathers, when I wet felted, I laid out like the greens, and I started with the dark green, and I did like a gradation to the light green. I made a huge sheet of the felt, and then I cut them out individually and then needle felted them on.
Awesome. And Doreen wants to know, what kind of glue do you use?
I use super glue.
Yes. Anne wants to know, do you paint the clay after it's baked?
Yes, I do paint the clay. If you do go to my Facebook page and you see the work in progress of Rico, and you can see me making the bead. So I'm going to demonstrate how to blend colors.
And tell us what you're working with there, Megan.
This is the Merino Cross Fast Felting Bats, MC1, and these are the colors that I would use for the tiger. So it goes from white to pumpkin spice. So these two, I don't really, for the top, like the top of the back, I leave it as this color, and then the stomach, I leave it as the white. But then for the, thank you. For the gradation between there, you have to blend the colors to get a nice smooth transition. So to do that, since I don't have hand carders, I just do it by hand. So I take some of the caramel, then I take some of the pumpkin, and then I lay on top of each other, and then you just have to pull it apart and keep restacking over and over again until the colors are nice and blended. So sometimes that can be time consuming if you're doing a large area. But then you have a color that's right in between those two. And then if you needed something that's a little bit more orange, you would add a little bit more of the pumpkin until you get the right shade. So once you have your colors blended, then when I lay it on the sculpture for the top coat, thanks.
Bullet.
Okay, so he's kind of already a white, but I can add a little bit more. So I lay the white down, and then I lay, is this sand?
Yes.
I think this is sand. This is sand. I lay that over top, and you leave the ends, when you pull off a piece, nice and fluffy. You just lay it on top, like that. So that's white sand. And then I'm going to mix the sand and the caramel. If you already have two colors that are really close together, you don't have to mix them before you blend them on the sculpture, but if they're drastically different, like these two, you'd want to mix them first.
Some people are saying that's how I blend too, which is this is how I blend too. And then some people are saying, oh, now I'm going to have to order more wool. This is so informative. And then Terry Throop said, do you start with equal amounts of each color?
Yeah, I always start with the same amount of each color, and then I adjust it if I need to change the color a little bit after that's blended. So I have the white, the sand, and then the caramel sand mix goes on top of that. And then the caramel. Like that. I'm going to tilt this down a little bit. That way it will stay in place for me. And then I'm going to do the caramel pumpkin mix on top of that. And then the pumpkin. So that's how you would blend from white to pumpkin.
That is awesome. You know, how many people had this on their bucket list for the year? How did they How do they do, they said shading on animals. How do they do shading? And so this is showing how to go. So they want to see the blend up close, and it might be different for each camera, but come into this area first.
All right, so this is the, does that show up well?
A little higher. There you go.
This is
That's a little
the
better.
pumpkin caramel blend, and this is the caramel sand blend. And then here's the blend on top of just the pumpkin.
Right. It's subtle,
Yeah.
but it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's the tiny details that make all the difference.
We do some of these same colors in our Fox picture kit, blending those
Yeah.
same colors. This is awesome, y'all. How about, I want to see a round of hearts for this. Megan's giving you the goods right now. All the inside scoop on how she does these amazing, here they come. I think people get a little drop-jawed, like for the moment, and they don't know what to do with all that. Okay, so many layers. Do you blend it all and then needle felt it, or do you needle felt between each layer?
Sometimes I like to lay it all out and then needle felt it. That way, when you needle felt it all together, I think it blends the fiber even more than if you did it one at a time. Sometimes, even after I do the hand blending and I needle felt it on, it still kind of looks choppy. So
Yes.
sometimes I have to do multiple layers of blending. So after I would needle felt this down, I would then do it again over top of that, until I get
Right.
a nice smooth transition.
Now, did you say you use hand cards?
I do not. I just
You
use,
do not.
I just use my hands.
Yeah, okay. Someone asked about using a dog brush. That always comes up, but really good.
Thank you.
This is awesome. Okay, what questions do we have?
Well, Tracy Edwards, first of all, shares, Megan is the bomb. She is a great explainer.
Thank you.
So Pam wants to know, what is the biggest animal you have ever made?
The biggest animal I've made, I think, is my life-sized raven. He has his wings open. I think a wingspan of like over 50 inches, I think. So that's the biggest one I've made. I've also made a life-sized wire fox terrier, so that was pretty big.
Now, did you sell the raven?
The raven, I did not sell him yet. He's still for sale.
He's still for sale. And
Yes.
someone asked, is the parrot for sale?
Yes, the parrot is for sale. Rico's for sale.
So Rico's for sale, and that's in your Etsy shop,
Yeah, he's in
the
my
Woolen
Etsy
Wagon.
shop.
We're going to put the links at the top of the description for the post and at the top of our Facebook page, our YouTube channel too. Someone says, such terrific information. Definitely the details make a huge difference, and Megan's are fabulous.
Thank you.
Okay, what else did we have? I know we had something else for Megan to show and demonstrate or tell us about. How much does this guy weigh?
I'm not sure how much he weighs.
Okay, I'm
I
gonna
didn't
go weigh him.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, we got a couple questions. Going back to Rico, how many layers of merino did you use for wet felting the sheets for his feathers?
For the feathers, I like to keep it really thin. That way the feathers are thin. So I just do one layer of fiber, going one way, and then one layer going the other way. And then I do really, really thin layer of the color blending. So it's really like 2.5, 3 layers.
And do you have, Kim wants to know, do you have any advice when working with polymer clay?
Polymer clay is just, sometimes it's frustrating, but it helps to have really clean hands, or else everything, your oils, and if you have any kind of dirt or anything on your hands, it'll show in your clay. Also, a secret that I learned that really helped me when I'm working with clay is that you can sand it after you bake it. So you can smooth out all your fingerprints after it's baked. Because that's a big frustration.
And you don't want to get fiber in it too.
Right, yeah.
Is someone else that wants to know, did you sell the Fox Terrier already?
Yeah, the Fox Terrier was a commission, so that was actually someone's pet that I made for them.
Now, you have a long wait time on your commissions. What is that?
Right now it's 6 to 8 months. Yeah.
So get in line, people. Someone asked, do you make the heads separate? And then someone else, how do you make the cattails? Do you have a wire in them? So that's like
Yeah.
2 parts of the same.
Yeah, the
Same
heads I
question,
make right
so-
on the body. Right on the armature. Here, so here's the armature for the cat. So here's the neck and the head. So I make it all, I don't make anything separate and then add it on, except for maybe like toes or ear. I add the ears on separate, but everything is made on the armature. So you just have to go in layers and kind of build it up as you go. And then what was the question? Oh, the cattail. Yeah, here's the tail. This is 14 gauge aluminum wire on a 12 gauge body. So I just attach it right to the armature.
And someone asked, what kind of paint are you using on your clay, and then is it sealed after?
Yeah, I'm using acrylic paint on the clay. Right now I'm sealing it with Mod Podge, but I'm trying to find a different material because I'm not really liking that one, but that's what I'm using right now.
Cool. I think everyone's just so thrilled, Megan. Megan, what is your next big thing that you want to felt for you? What's on your bucket list?
I don't know. There's just so many animals that I want to make. I think since I have a really hard time deciding, so I think I'm just going to make a jar and put lots of different ideas in it and then draw one out because I can't decide.
Oh man, that's a good idea. That sounds like a group challenge. Who will finish? God, that's a really great idea. I don't know what that question means. Oh, polymer clay, different brands. Oh, they're just having side conversations. They're telling each other what to do. I know I wanted to ask you something. So what commissions are you working on now? Like, what are some examples of animals you're working on now?
So I've gotten some really fun commissions. Like I just finished a little Senegal parrot, which was a lot of fun. I have lots of dog commissions. I just got a commission for a dinosaur, so that'll be in like 6 months. I'll be working on that. A dinosaur, a goat I just recently got, so lots of fun ones coming up.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
And Kelly asks, do you wrap your armature with pipe cleaners before felting?
Yes, I do. I use pipe cleaners. So here's one that I've already started felting on. So I wrap the entire armature with the pipe cleaners. And that just helps the wool to stick to it a little bit better.
And then another person asked if you have any professional artistic training. So would you talk a little bit about your formal training and then also maybe the evolvement of your needle felting?
Yeah, I went to the University of Findlay and I majored in graphic design and children's book illustration. So I didn't actually study sculpture, but I did study illustration. So I think that kind of crosses over a little bit. Really, the most important thing, even if I didn't have my training for art, I think the most important thing is just practice. I think practicing has helped me more than my art background.
Yeah, because there's light years. We were talking about light years difference between your first tiger and your current tiger.
Yeah.
Megan, someone asked about wrapping skinny legs. Would you show? We've talked about this before, but would you demonstrate? You want a longer piece? Demonstrate how you. I'll just give you the whole piece because we've done this, but it's important for people to get in their mind how thin and narrow they need to make those pieces.
So the most important part about wrapping skinny legs or anything skinny is to use very, very thin pieces of wool. So here's a piece of, is this the core wool?
It's actually cotton.
The cotton.
Okay, they get
here's
close
the cotton.
together.
Yeah. So when you rip off a piece, so even that might be too thick. So you can rip it in half again. It's important to start really skinny and then you can always add more later if it's too thin. So then I start at the top and I wrap it all the way down. You have to wrap as tightly as you can without breaking the fiber. So instead of adding one thick piece of wool, it's better to add multiple thin layers and needle felt that as you go. That way it starts to felt up nice and firm. So then after I do that layer, I would use my needle to felt it down a little bit. And it's kind of hard to do it on the legs since it has that wire in there. But when you felt, you can kind of go at an angle. That way your needle slides over the top of the wire. And you just keep doing that until you build up the legs to the full thickness that you want it to be.
Now your last layers, your final layers, do you use the coarse needles on your final layers, or you're using 38 spirals or finer?
Yeah, I'm using 38 or 40 gauge needles spirals for the top layer. And that, along with felting really firm, will help get rid of your needle pokes, the marks that your needle makes.
This is awesome. People are so excited. They want to know everything you have to tell. They're like basically asking for brain dump right now.
Yeah.
What about bird legs and bird legs? So can we look at your parrot feet and then I mean, I'm sure it's very similar.
Yeah, so the process is the same for making skinny bird feet. Yeah, so I'll spread his toes out a little bit. Yeah, these are wrapped in pipe cleaners so the wool sticks to it a little bit better. And then you just wrap in really, really thin pieces of wool until you build it up to the thickness that you want it to be. And actually, on the Parrot that I just finished, I experimented and I did the wet felting over the wire like you guys showed on the Woolly Wednesday a few weeks ago.
Oh, huh?
Yeah, and that worked out pretty good too. So if you're really trying to get the thin, like on the bird legs where it has to be really thin and really smooth, I tried the wet felting and that worked pretty well.
So something we did helped you too?
Yeah.
That's thrilling. That's so
Yeah.
cool though. Yeah, well feathering over wire is
Yeah.
pretty cool. Now someone asked about your chipmunks. Are they really firm too? So some people have a tendency sometimes to do squirrel or chipmunks or bunnies like more loose.
No, everything that I make is the same consistency, is the same firmness. Yeah, I like to do really, really firm, and that way when you add the fur, when you add the top coat, it's nice and smooth, or you can get the fur to stay in really well.
So can I weigh your bird? Because
Yeah,
someone's
you can
just
weigh it.
asking now, is it solid or hollow?
It's
No,
solid.
it's solid.
It's solid wool.
So it's got like, can I just show the
Yeah,
sort
you
of
can
fluff
do that.
factor? So like you can push a little bit on the top, just watch the fluff layer, you know, a little bit, but underneath he's rock solid.
Yes, I can
He's
kind of-
very
I'll
firm.
try to, this is the
Let me
long
see.
fur application on the bird, so if I pull apart some of the long fiber, that's I don't know, probably half of an inch of the long fur, and then underneath he's a solid core of wool.
He's solid under there.
Yeah,
I
he's
could
really
feel
solid.
him. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
And then when you do long fur, if you do have like a comb or dog brush, I always brush them out after I finish them, that way their fur stays nice and smooth.
These are all really great questions. Everyone wants to do what you're doing. So, let's see. Someone says on your recent Parrot, you felted on a straight piece of wire and then bent the end in the toes, or do you do it in pieces? I don't know what they mean by do it in pieces.
For
but
the
you,
claw, I made the armature, and then I took really thin wire. It wasn't even the aluminum wire, it was just some floral wire, I think, and I added the claws. So if this were a bird toe, you would add the claws on the wire, and then I added the clay to the claws and baked the whole armature in there.
oh, cool. Mhm. So you had your positioning first. Did the clay touch that armature?
No, the clay just was on the,
Extending wire.
yeah.
So what was the purpose of baking it all together if they weren't touching that armature?
It just-
What did it do? Helped you control the size?
Yeah, help me control the size, and then actually one piece of wire was one front claw and one back claw, if that makes sense.
Yes, one wire was both.
Right, yeah. So if this were a piece of wire, one wire was the front claw, and then the other side of the wire was the back claw. So
Did you wrap it around the
yeah,
leg?
and then I wrapped it around the toes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So someone's asking about these feathers. How do you trim the long feathers, individual feathering on Rico's neck?
Yeah, I made the neck feathers the same as the wing feathers. I wet felted a sheet and then I cut them out individually. So these feathers are really small, and then as I started applying like the chest fur or the feathers, I would add some fur and some feathers at the same time. That way it's kind of like a blend.
Mm-hmm. Alternating.
Mm-hmm.
Alternating wet felt and just dry felt.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna weigh Rico.
Okay.
Let you guys ask me a question.
Let's see. And, nope, that question was answered. Heidi asks, would you use a heavier needle to define muscles before you apply your top coat?
Yes, I like to make sure that the any kind of shaping that's going to be part of the shaping of the animal is done before the top coat, and then you can add shape a little bit on the top coat, but most of the shaping is done with the heavier needle before you apply the top coat.
And Sharon asks, can we see Rico's neck up close?
Sure. You can kind of see the feathers more on the side.
Okay, in this camera I'll try and zoom in.
And Patty shares, I love your birds. They are gorgeous.
There we go.
Thank you. Yeah, so the feathers up here, It's a combination of wet felted cutout feathers and also just the long hair application. So I mix those two together to make it more of a natural look instead of all wet felted feathers or all long hair application.
Getting lots of love, Megan.
Thank you.
How do you decide the size of the glass eyes that you're going to use?
Okay, so to decide the size, it really helps to have all the sizes on hand and then have like a dummy set so you can cut them out. I had this one. So if you have multiple sizes, then you can just kind of stick it in the face, and if you like that size, that's the size you can use, or you can, you know, stick different sizes in to see which size works better. So it's just trial and error.
Mm-hmm. Everyone is so thrilled. I know they all wish they were here, so some people are asking if you have intentions to do video classes.
I mean, that's a hope that I would love to do that in the future, but I just don't have the resources to do that right now.
Devin asks, do you seal the edges of the feathers after cutting?
Nope, I just cut them out, and if they're felted well enough, then they won't fray.
Right, yeah, and it's not for toys.
Right,
it's not
yeah.
to play with. Like
Yeah.
your sculptures get pawed a lot and showing and telling,
Mhm.
and that's like enough. All right. Okay. So do you use any wire on the larger? Can we talk about a little bit about the wire in the larger feathers?
Yeah, I can talk
Did we
about
talk about that already?
Yeah, so on Rico, since he's a smaller bird and his wings are closed, I didn't add any wires to the feathers because the feathers are supported on the body. But for a larger bird like the life-size raven that I did, his wings are opened, so the feathers need to be supported. So I applied a wire that I wrapped in wool and then I sewed it to the feather.
With your sewing machine, right?
Right, yeah.
You demonstrated that for us last year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that will help the feather to, you know, stick out instead of flop over.
Someone says, I feel like I'm stealing from Megan's brain. She's sharing such valuable, that was a fantastic information. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
Thank you.
Megan, what's your favorite animal that you felted so far?
I really love felting parrots. I just think they're a lot of fun. They have really big personalities, so I really enjoy making parrots.
Will you own a parrot?
I would love to own a parrot one day, yes. I don't own one right now, though.
Very good. Well, Megan, we're excited to absorb from you the next 3 days, and just so glad to have you back. And
Thank you.
thanks to Jody for driving her. Is there anything, you know what I think would be great if you just, maybe to wrap up, if you tell us, like, what advice would you give someone, whether they're just starting or they feel like their sculptures still just look kind of, someone said cartoony, like they wanted to know, how do I go from cartoony to more realistic? But what advice would you, if you had 3 things to offer us or 4 things to offer us, what would it be?
Okay, so the first one, which everyone probably hears all the time, is practice, 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 because the reason you hear that all the time is because that's the most important thing. When I first started, my sculptures looked really cartoony and not very realistic, so it's just really important to practice, and with every animal you'll improve and you'll learn something new to apply to the next animal. The next piece of advice is to really study reference photos. If you want to make a realistic animal, you really have to know what the animal looks like. So you have to look at pictures from the front, from the back, the sides, skeletons, muscles, and different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The third piece of advice is really tricky. I would just say have patience, probably. Neuter felting is not a quick, something you can just do something really quick. You definitely have to take your time and just, it's better to take more time and take longer to make something and really put the detail in than to try to make it really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So someone who's coming here tomorrow says she's so excited to be here, and everyone else is saying they wish they could take a class with you, and they're just so grateful for you sharing this time with us today. They're
I'm so
really,
grateful to
really.
be here.
Yeah. Well, we're going to give away some prizes, right? So let's have Megan help us out. Megan, will you draw our names
Yeah,
to
I
give
will.
away our presents?
Yeah.
So Anne has names for us. Thank you, everybody, for participating. The fairies always come back to give away prizes, but today Megan is going to draw the names. Now, Anne's going to put us to work. So what we have today, we have 3 prizes, right?
We do.
So here's what we're going to do today, kind of like we did last time, right? We're going to give away 3 prizes, and what you get to do is choose any one of those 3. So in honor of Megan being here, we stayed more towards the needle felting side. So should we show the prizes first?
Sure.
And then they'll know, okay, what they get to pick. So you tell us and then one of us will hold.
Okay, prize number 1, a super variety.
Yeah. So a super variety pack of needles, that's 10 different 3-packs of needles, every size of needle we carry. If your name is John, you can choose that. Or
Prize number 2 is 2 2-ounce rolls of MC1, your choice, and an 8-ounce bundle of core wool.
awesome. So that's a pretty good starter for a critter, right? Now, so y'all, the tiger weighed 5.5 ounces, and the parrot weighed over 8 or over 9?
9.5.
9.5 ounces. But the beak is going to be a heavy part.
Yeah, the beak is actually not solid clay. It has aluminum foil in the middle, so it's not super heavy.
And take, yeah, but, okay. So needles or that, or
An armature starter bundle.
yeah, so the starter bundle has a 4 ounce of core wool. You'll get green floral wire so you can just practice your shapes, the 18 gauge wire. Oh, we got the needle nose pliers in there too. We have the 14 gauge and the 12 gauge needles because like last year we used 14 for the tail, right? And so, you know, if you're not too heavy, a whole bunch of wire and core wool. So you get to pick. And Megan's going to draw our names.
All right. All right. Luoma Farm.
Yay! Luoma! So Luoma, you can email customer service and let us know which of these 3 prizes you would like. Just pick one.
All right. Spring,
Yeah.
Seldom Ridge.
Yay! Yay, spring! Congratulations! So you two, girlfriend, pick one of the 3. Email customer service. Heart first over there, Pam. Give us a heart on the. There you go.
All right. Pam Cavell.
Oh, sorry, that's an R.
Oh, Tammy Carell.
Pam Carell Deneb or Deneb. Yay, Pam! Congratulations! Thank you, everyone, for welcoming Megan. We're so glad to have her, and this is going to be, I know, a video that's watched over and over and over. So thanks for playing with us today, and we're going to watch for what you pull out of your own jar of what you want to feld, and hopefully it's a critter, and you'll post it. Follow Megan online. She's on Etsy under the Woolen Wagon. She's on Facebook under the Woolen Wagon. And just maybe we can convince her to come back and do a video class with us and with each other. Some other people are going to, so maybe she will too. All right, you guys.
Bye,
Have a great week. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Heart.